Hi, salam
Okay.
sejahtera. Good evening, everyone watching, and welcome to another live session on DOBBS. And with me tonight, I'm very privileged to have some guests to be interviewed, and we'll have a nice chit chat. Firstly, there's Dr. Pagalavan, who is very well known, not only as a physician in Johor, but a physician and rheumatologist in Johor, but also he has a blog called Dr. Pagalavan's Avatar. I think it covers a lot of medical education and career of doctors. And I also have with me two medical officers who have been or are in the contract medical officer system, and that's Dr. Harith Abd Rani, who is actually the first generation contract medical officer, and Dr. Sean Thum, who is the president of MMI, which is Malaysian Medics International. Sean, can't see your camera. If you can turn on your camera. There you are. Hi.
Yeah.
Are you on mobile?
Yes, I'm in mobile. Just give me 5 minutes to set up, then I'll be ready.
Sure, sure. Okay, I'll remove the overlay a bit so we'll have uh, more screen view. Let's put out that. Okay. Now, the background to the scenario is something which, what prompted this is a number of articles have appeared on press and media, and indeed has been happening for the last 4 or 5 years now, because it's a real issue which is affecting our junior medical doctors. The HOs have become medical officers, and the main thing is they can't now get permanent positions. There aren't enough permanent positions to go around. So, what the government has offered to these doctors who finish a housemanship is they get only contract positions. There's no more permanent positions for the doctors. I think we saw this coming, isn't it, Dr. Bagalavan? In
Yeah,
your blog, you said the coming storm, the whatnot.
I
Um,
think I saw that coming 15 years ago.
hmm. I
Yeah,
think because of the number of medical schools
yeah,
which actually have been churning out so many graduates, and there's something
yeah,
like over 5,000 medical graduates now, and I think it's just there aren't enough posts. It may be. It's not to say I don't know. Will you agree with me? It's not to say there aren't enough. There are too many doctors, or is just not enough posts. Which is a relative thing, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, people keep harping on the ratio, but the ratio, I mean, I've written this many times, the ratio doesn't answer anything because you can have on paper a ratio of 1 in 500, but that doesn't mean that we have enough doctors serving the public because of distribution, and not everyone are doing clinical work. A lot of them are doing non-clinical work. So, yeah, I mean, on paper, you may see the numbers, but in reality, we probably still need a lot of hospitals and a lot of smaller centers in remote, I mean, outskirts and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the health minister had just come out to say that we've exceeded the WHO recommended ratio, and then there was a report from East Malaysia saying that their ratio is actually very poor. So
Yeah.
it seems there's indeed a maldistribution actually.
Yeah.
Although you can say we may have enough, but in the rural areas and maybe in East Malaysia,
Yeah.
there's still a shortage.
Yeah. It's not
And
just
and
rural and urban, but also between public and private. We don't have an integrated healthcare system. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Malaysia has a unique dichotomous
Mm.
system where it's either all private or all public.
Mm.
But I think the other maldistribution seems to be we are bottom heavy. That means we don't seem to have enough specialists
Yeah.
or senior doctors, and we are sort of very bottom heavy with junior doctors who need training. So
Yeah.
this is the issue from my perspective, right or wrong. But I think there are two types of maldistribution in in physical as well as manpower.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe we'll go on to our medical officers here, Harith and Sean. So Harith, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you shared your letter to the health minister about your aspirations to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, and then what happened? What caused the dream to fade out for you?
Well, to be honest, the decision to resign from KKM is not something that was made within a few weeks or even months. This has been thought about for quite some time, looking at how the issue was being handled by the ministry, and it was made worse by political instability in our government of the Malaysia. So what basically, as a contract medical officer, you face a lot of discrepancy in terms of treatment, regardless of how good you are, how much you contribute, and whether you are doing the same job with others. You do not receive equal treatment. For example, like just to quote our health minister saying that those on contract can just take a parallel pathway to take into to become a specialist. This may or may not true, but it's definitely not true for people who are surgically oriented, want to do surgical master's degree program. This is not true. Parallel pathway just doesn't work. When you look at contract officers, they don't even get chuti for exam, and so many other chutis are being taken out. And just to make things worse, these people may also not have scholarship with JPA or some other bodies. So having that said, there's a financial concern as well. So taking parallel pathway is not really a quick fix, not even a quick fix to address that solution. So in short, I'm a first generation medical officer. So we are the guinea pigs of the system. If there's anything that's going to hit us hard, it's going to be my generation. So looking at that, with the hopeless statement coming from our health minister, it doesn't look like we're going to stand a chance. So every single day is, just to highlight one thing, every single day is a struggle for us. If we look at the terms of the agreement, there's a contract medical officer, they said that you can be fired at any time without any notice. So let's not talk about specialty program first. We are not even barely being given stability in our own daily practices. We can be fired at any time. Having said that, it's hard already becoming a doctor, and it was made even harder by the ministry. It just doesn't work.
Okay, I think for those who are not clear, including myself, the situation, the comparison between contract medical officer and those with the permanent position is that you can't, because of some ruling, unless you are in a permanent position, you cannot join the master's courses for specialization. Am I right? I'm very pleased that our chairman of MMA Schomos, Dr. Kevin Ng, has managed to join us despite a family emergency which he had to attend. Kevin, no video, but can you hear us?
Yeah, unfortunately I can't share my video because I will look horrible. I'm hiding in the room at this current moment.
It's okay. We've seen you in your OT gear, so
cannot be worse than that, is it?
Cannot be worse, yeah. But very kind of you to join us. So Harith was just sharing the difficulties they face in training.
I just heard that now. Can I just make that statement? Ellen, you mentioned about how it's impossible for the contract officers. Now let's go back to a little bit of backstory of why the contract officers, and we've just had 3 days of meeting with JPA and the Sumber Manusia of KKM. Outcomes have been good. I'll elaborate on that later. But just to put Harith and Sean aside, just to allay some fears and all, you guys are the guinea pigs. I agree 100%, because you guys are the first batch that we're dealing with this, and we're trying very hard to sort it out. Now, in 2008, when I became a medical officer, the MMA had already stated at that time categorically. Even Dr. Pagavel, Pagavalan, when I read your blog at that time, so you have already stated 2015 we will have too many doctors. Unfortunately, for people like Harith and Sean, you were born and you graduated at that correct timing at 2015, 2016 when you entered the service. So that's what has happened. And if we did not move to contract positions, you would still be waiting for your housemanship position at this time. So what the government had to do at that time, at that point in time when we had filled up every single pejawatan, that means all positions in the ministry have been filled, right? What they were doing, they were taking 2 nurses positions and combining it to become 1 doctor's position. 2 U29 to become 1 U41. That's what they are doing. That's why our pejawatan now is at 105%, because that 5% came from us combining a few other positions into one. So the wait was excessive. Everybody was making noise. So we said, okay, we will then switch towards a contract system, because according to law, by law, the government has to give you 1 year of housemanship. Okay, let's go by law. By law, 1 year of housemanship, 2 years of compulsory service. By a cabinet decree, they have extended the housemanship training to 2 years. So now it's 2 plus 2. So at this current moment, that's how the contract came about for you all. It's 2 plus 1 to complete your housemanship, plus another 2 years for compulsory service. Okay. Now, the reason why all this came about was so-called to hasten the hiring process, because the formation of a new pejawatan will take eons to create. Because since then, since 2010, then reiterated again in 2015, the moratorium on hiring by JPA is still enforced, meaning that we cannot expand our services, we cannot increase our pejawatan without justification. So just because you graduated does not mean that the government has to create a position for you. So the government, in order to get over all this, what they did, we created a contract position. Now, when the contract position came out, Schomos, again, at that time I was the secretary, we already said to them, you have to be careful, because when you finish the contract, what's going to happen to all of you? So we had already started our engagement from that period on. At that point in time, based on the projections, it was estimated that 50 to 60% of the entire cohort will be absorbed. However, as we now know, there's only 12.9%, about 12% of you all that are actually absorbed. So that's a very sad number, and that's where it forms the basis of my arguments with JPA, and it forms the basis of my so-called request to JPA and how to help us. And I would like to say that after a lot of work, finally we have some insight to say that yes, we need to continue the process. We need to ensure that we have a bahagian pelapis. We have a few backup, a few reserve doctors, not just whatever that we have hired at 500 that have been absorbed, but we need at least 2,000 doctors every year to be absorbed, to be trained as specialists. And that is the target number. Essentially, it's about 50% of the entire cohort. I will not guarantee that everybody gets a job. That's the first statement that I've said again and again. But I also will admit that not every one of you wants to work with the government. Because for cohort 1, I will tell you, only 40% of you actually fill up the forms to say that you would like to work with the government. The other 60% actually didn't bother to fill up the forms. So that's the stark reality of things. So to answer Harith, for surgical training, it is impossible to do specialization. At this point in time, whatever parallel pathway you want to talk about is impossible to do with the current contract system. And because of that, that is the basis for our arguments for an extended contract. Thankfully, like I said, in the last few days, the discussions have been very good. We are going, the process is in place. Hopefully, within the next 6 months, we'll have some very concrete announcements, and then we will have that process. So what we are trying to form now is a mechanism to allow people like Sean, outstanding people like Harith and Sean, to specialize, for you to go further, for you to extend, and to create a proper career pathway. Now, when I talk to the JPA people, we must understand, when you say contract officer to a JPA officer, a contract officer is elected or is selected through the civil service okay, for the buying of a service that you can provide. It's very simple. JPA is very clear on this. When I hire a contract officer, I am buying a service from you. However, for a healthcare worker hired under a contract, it's very different. A contract worker hired under a contract is to carry out a compulsory service by law. So that's a slight difference, but was not made clear when we signed the initial contract. So what JPA, or essentially what the contract did, was they lumped you together with all the other contract officers for every other department. And when you become a contract officer, you lose every single privilege of a permanent officer. And that, Dr. Allen, is why they do not qualify for cuti belajar bergaji penuh. They do not qualify for any cuti belajar, because you see, the term of the contract is to buy a service. If I am paying you for a service, how can I pay you to go and study?
Yeah, but you see, what I don't understand, I mean, you and I know when you become a specialist, it doesn't mean you take time off work and then belajar. We actually
Okay.
have to work.
Yes. I totally understand. But that is what us doctors understand. But when you are talking to an administrator, to them, when you take a cuti belajar, it is meant to belajar. It has nothing to do with how we do it. The actual process, when they are talking, when we look at it, the top people, they treat us all the same, even though we are a unique bunch. And that is what we've been mentioning it repeatedly. We're trying to educate, and that's what we've been trying to do for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Trying to tell them that, look, our cuti belajar is a
Yeah.
misnomer. Kita tidak cuti, kita bekerja belajar.
Yeah, you can bekerja dalam contract and train to be a specialist. In fact, this is what the university hospital did. Well, I have to go and say during my time. During my time, I was with the KKM, and then I left the KKM to join the university hospital. And I think I was under contract with the university hospital. So, but I was still doing government service as long as there was not a. You don't look too bad, Kevin. It's okay. But as long as there's no break, I was still under contract, and then later on I went into academia. But you could still train and be under contract, which I think the MOH, the JPA really needs to understand that this is no cuti belajar. It is not just reading books to become a specialist.
And that is the light bulb moment that after all our discussions for the last 4 years, that was the light bulb moment when they realized that actually these people are not cuti bergoyang kaki dekat rumah. The cuti belajar is actually, you are actually working, service continues. That's what we've been trying to categorically state to them.
This is not something new, This has been going on for many years. Many years ago, when you go for masters, you're considered as cuti belajar bergaji penuh. So what they do is they actually remove all the allowances. And I think MMA took like years to get that sorted out. That was in the 90s. Yet now they're still thinking the same way.
I think, Dr. Pagavalan, it's just the thought, the thinking. When when an officer thinks that you're on cuti belajar bergaji penuh, means that you're sitting somewhere doing a thesis. That's the idea. Yeah. It's like when I say you're a dental patient, you're leaking. That type of thing. Yeah. That's the thing.
It's similar to what they did to masters those days. They put all the masters together. So if you go to a master's program, you're considered cuti belajar bergaji penuh. Means you're basically studying and not working. So they remove all your allowance. I'm sure the junior doctors may not know this, but in the 90s, if you join a master's program in the university, you don't get any of your allowance. You only get the basic pay. And it took years for MMA to fight for it and say, no, you are actually physically working while studying. That means cuti belajar sambil bekerja. Only then they paid back all the allowance. So it took, I think, almost 10 years for MMA to actually got that to be sorted out. Just to give you the scenario of how these administrators think. They don't think medical as separate than non-medical.
On the on the issue of extending contract, there's a question in Facebook from Ashraf. Does the proposal of extending the contract include restructuring the grade and salary? I think, Sean, you wrote a letter to the Star recently, last in end of July, about the reality contract doctors face. I think that letter was just a summary of everything, regarding your cousin who was talking about doing medicine. I think you rightly said that, I think the whole thing makes people go into medicine for the real reason. I think if there are any parents or any students out there, you're not going to go into medicine for the money. It's not the money. You got to have a passion to really want to serve and look after people, that, and have that real desire. But nevertheless, I mean, people still, you have to eat. There has to be a rice bowl. Times are hard. The cost of living is high. And then you mentioned that contract doctors are hired under UD 41 service grade, which is actually the houseman grade, if I'm not mistaken. And that's lower than the permanent doctor's grade of 44. So that's to me, this sounds a bit unfair, because your two categories of medical officers doing the same thing, but the gaji tak sama. I mean, so I think that creates quite a bit of unhappiness. Will that be addressed, Kevin, in the negotiations with JPA or something?
Yes. Okay. So I think if anyone has been following what I've been writing, my long-winded, my professor said they cannot bear to read my nonsense because I write too long. But I think it has to be expressed in that way. Yes. We will try and get it addressed, one thing at a time. So the first thing that we are looking to address, U41 to U43 or U44 for all contract. It means it doesn't matter whether you're extended or not. All contract, the minute you become an MO, you're 43. That's the first thing that we're looking to address. Again, my discussions with them looks positive. I'm hopeful. If it doesn't, then I will be the one leading the the thing. We will lead a change. We will do something to make sure that this is addressed. That one I would say. We will really make sure that this gets done. That's the first one. Because Sean knows that for the last 1 year, we've been working very hard on this. So that one is almost done. That's why I've actually stopped campaigning, because I think it's almost there. For the extended contract, my first statement is, let's get the extended contract. And if you are already at 43, you should start at 43 for the extended contract. I'm also looking at all my proposals have always been to a 48 for the extended contract, right? Because I do foresee that in the future, HLP is something that's going to go. You will have to invest, you will have to pay for your own training. This is something that I have to state outright. It's not HLP. Again, was given for people to specialize, and it will likely come a time when HLP will either be withdrawn or it will be reduced and only focus on areas of need. Meaning that if they were to see that there are too many physicians, they may switch and say that we only want to sponsor surgeons. If they feel that they've got too many of a certain specialty, because that's the lucrative one, they will focus on others that they need. So that switch around may occur. So I do think all our proposals have been for 48. I cannot guarantee, but we will be fighting for it. Okay.
Now, we was talking to Harith earlier before we came live, and I'm not very clear what the situation is now. So they finish housemanship, then they become contract MOs. Do some still become permanent MOs when the position arises, or does everybody remain contract?
So to tell Sean and gang, your cohort and all, last I checked, there's about 500 positions open, right? There are 500 current open MO positions, about 500 odd. Has increased slightly the last I checked as well, but they are in the process of lantikan tetap. So they are in the process of trying to hire all of them as permanent to fill these positions, because these positions has to be filled. The issue with hiring is that, Sean, they all have been campaigning very hard saying that there is no transparency in the selection system, which I
Selection
agree.
criteria.
Yeah, the selection criteria and all. The process itself is quite good. It's just that the problem with the selection process is that it's shrouded in a lot of mystery. There's a lot of things that we may not understand. I can tell you a rough outline. That's what I've been briefed, and that's what I've been sharing with everyone. I can tell you the rough outline of it. But the final process, as per, Dr. Ellen and Dr. Paga, no, JUSA selection is equally is just the same. It's a mystery. It's like the Egyptian pyramids. How the hell did it happen? Nobody knows, right?
No, but
the
you see,
selection process
yeah. What Pagalavan was mentioning earlier also before we went live. I mean, do we really need these permanent positions? Like
Okay.
Australia and a lot of other countries, there are no permanent positions for MO. Everybody is on contract, right?
Until you are specialist, then you become a permanent position.
Yes.
Then you become an in-house.
In fact, so there's no what
We
to
are
say,
moving
double,
to
tier,
double standards.
double tier, one permanent MO, contract MO. I think everybody is a contract MO. In fact, to me, if you do that, I mean, then you can
It's
have
a level playing field for everybody. Yes.
and you can actually select
once
those.
the extended contract, the minute the extended contract comes into play, right, there will be no more permanent MO contracts. That's what I foresee.
Yep.
The minute the extended contract comes into play, all permanent positions will be reserved for when you qualify, when you gazette, they will offer you a permanent position to the selected field.
And would, like, say, Dr. Harith still aspiring to be cardiothoracic, I hope. Now, would MOs who have left be able to rejoin as contract?
Okay. This is something that we have not addressed and we have not discussed. Okay. Those that have left and come back, by the nature of a contract, you should be able to. However, we know the government system. Once you have left the system and come back into the system, you will restart. There's a reset every time you come back into the system. The guarantee that there is continuity, that your previous service will be taken into account, is not there. That one, I'm quite sure no one will guarantee you that. Okay, so I would say stay on, do your best, get the MEDEX done early, right? I hope that within 6 months I can give you something more positive. I can give you something more concrete in 6 months' time. But get your MEDEX done. Make sure that your your SKTs are all correct, all your paperwork is correct, so that when the time comes, you are ready. You are at that top of the list for you to qualify. But if you're going to sit around and not do anything and not help yourself, then susahlah untuk saya tolong kamu. Okay?
There are also some other differences. Again, I think Sean and the MMI team also highlighted it's not just salary differences. It's not just the training, but there are also some service issues which seems to be a bit troubling to me. One is they don't, say if you become sick and you need to take prolonged medical leave, say you catch a major illness like tuberculosis, which
example.
and then you may lose your job because that's one of the terms under the contract service. If you take it's more than 75 days, you are at risk of losing a job. Is that right, Kevin? And also there's also a lot of gray areas which are not clear to me, which is such as our contract medical officers also covered under medical indemnity.
Insurance.
We talked about that in the last the last session. I don't know whether Kevin is still with us. So what are your thoughts, Sean, from the MMI perspective?
Actually, Kevin would be the right person to address this issue here, because in his meeting a couple of days ago, he actually discussed about this issue. So if I didn't recall wrongly, he has mentioned that the JPA would be looking into this issue, and he's quite positive that there will be a good resolution to this issue.
Which issue is this? This is the JPA. Sorry, I was away for a while. This is the JPA scholars, is it?
TB.
Oh, okay.
Prolonged
TB,
illness and medical indemnity for contract
Medical
officers.
indemnity, yes, confirmed. Everybody is covered, right?
Okay.
Whether you are contract and whatnot, because you are providing a service for the government, you are covered. This one, there is 2 letters for it. One of it covers all the medical officers and all. Another one covers the private doctors who are contracted to serve in the government hospitals. They are also covered. So yes, you are covered indemnity-wise. Cuti too. Now this is the big argument. Now I will have to say, Harith, you brought up again just now earlier on. You brought up that when you want to take exams, you are not given the cuti tanpa record. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. This is actually following. Again, your admin is following black and white to the circular. Yep. This is following exactly to the word with the circular. But if you were to read the circular, at the end of the day, it's up to your head of department and whether the head of department, based on the service needs, will allow you to go. In the circular is clearly stated that the kuasa untuk cuti tanpa rekod adalah di bawah ketua jabatan. So if the ketua jabatan says yes, that is his prerogative. However, if your hospital, like Sean mentioned, if your hospital comes out with black and white and says semua tak layak, then semua tak layak lah. Even me, when I go and take my Australian paper, so I have to take cuti sendiri. There's no cuti tanpa record.
I think that depends on the head of department. Even for the permanent officers, it's the same.
Same thing.
Even when I said for my MRCP, I had to go overseas, I had to take my own annual leave because the unrecorded leave is usually probably is only given on the day of the exam and nothing more than that. The rest you have to take your annual leave.
The head of department because it's based on keperluan service.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also had to, back in my day, I also had to accumulate leave. In fact, I had to accumulate 2 years leave, so it was 2 months. And those days we had to sit the membership exams in UK. We didn't have the privilege of having to sit it in Malaysia or Singapore, So it's really tough. But still, I mean, having to take your own leave is not anything new. But I think it's more the opportunity to undergo the training, and the pathway needs to be clarified. Because as I said, we are bottom heavy. We are not top heavy. We don't have the specialists in the numbers in public service as well, especially. There's a question I can't answer. I'm not clear. It says, what about those in the army? And I heard those people are not absorbable into KKM once they finish contract with the army. I'm not sure if that's true. Does anyone know? I think people in the army can join back government service. I find it strange if that's the case.
Actually, those that finish in the army, if there's such a thing as the thing about a contract system is that anybody can apply. It doesn't matter who and what you are. Permanent service, once you have left permanent service, you cannot join back under the same grade. It's clearly written that if you resign as a permanent MO, you cannot come back as a permanent MO without special permission. Previously, some people left and come back under MO positions was with this special dispensation. Currently, no. So in the contract system, it's open. Anybody can come and go, but you wait your turn. So
what about the army? This one is about the army.
I don't see a reason why the army cannot join KKM if the contracts are open to them. You cannot come in as a 2-year compulsory service contract, but if it's an extended contract that we hope to see, then yes, you can apply. But on top of that, the army is very short of doctors. So I don't think that they are affected by this. Most of them will be diserap tetap. If you have an issue with this, please contact me, kevin.schomos@gmail.com, or you can go schomos@mma.org.my. We can then make an appointment because we are fairly close with the Army Director General, and we can discuss this because this is very subspecialized. This is something that I have to go and talk to them. It's not something that I can say offhand. What normally happens, even like the university system and all, the minute JPA applies to KKM, it will then be adopted by the rest of it. Everything that I ask for, I will always ask for healthcare workers as hired by Kementerian Kesihatan, Pertahanan, and Education. That's normally the way I write my proposals.
Okay, thanks for your insight, Kevin. Any other thoughts? What do you think of the future? You predicted the future right up to this point. What do you think the future will be?
It's not prediction, it's based on statistics and mathematical calculation.
Nostradamus of medicine. I have
Yeah.
been reading your blog since I was a houseman.
Yeah, you see, I was in Schomos way back in 2004, 2006, where I was in the National Schomos Committee, and in 2006, I remember we brought up the issue that if the rate of them approving the medical schools continues by 2015, even by 2014, you may actually see more production than the number of posts that the ministry can offer. And at that time in 2006, the number of medical schools was half than what we have now. There was only about 17 or 16 medical schools, and now we have almost like 31 or 33 medical schools. So even at that time, we actually brought this issue up. And Kevin, I'm sure you know how we have meetings with Ministry of Health, with the KSU and so on. The KSU at that time actually showed the paper, and even on their projection, they knew by 2012 there will be more body than post. They know about it. See, and it's not something new. And I remember in 2006, I actually wrote an article in MMA magazine. Future of government doctors die another day. The article is also available in my blog. So they knew all this. Okay, but when you raise the issue, they will say, "Well, we are Ministry of Health. We are employers. Medical school is not under our jurisdiction. Please approach Ministry of Higher Education." See, they will push it aside. And for Ministry of Higher Education, it's all about numbers on papers and KPI. Their KPI is all about, how many graduates they can produce and all that. They don't care about whether you have a job or not. So based on that, I must agree that Dr. Chua Solek was a Minister of Health in 2005, did put a short moratorium of medical schools for about 3 years, between 2005 to 2006 to 2008. After we brought up this issue, he had put a stop for a while. Then 2008, his scandal broke up, and then we had a new election and a new minister, and then another spike happened. Between 2008 and 2011, we have 100% increase in the number of medical schools compared to what we had before. So then the moratorium came in 2011. I started my blog 2010, so it's about 10-year-old now. And then I said that if this number persists, you are definitely by hook or crook, you're going to have more bodies than posts. There's no way a government can create 3,000 to 5,000 posts every year to offer everyone the job. That's almost impossible. But unfortunately, like what the previous health minister said, not the previous one, the previous before that, Dr. Subra, say that let the market force decide. Let the market force decide, which I find it very, I don't think that's a right statement to make, because medicine is such a, not only is it expensive to do it for those who are paying cash, but also the fact that the moment you graduate, there are certain rules and regulation in place. You can't simply graduate and then go and work anywhere you want. You have internship, then you have specialization, you have all this. And in Malaysia, specialization can only be done in Ministry of Health hospitals, which is almost same in many countries. Usually the public sector is where you do your training. But
should that change, I wonder?
There was they are talking about it. They are talking about it. But to me, doing training in private hospitals have their own pros and cons, and probably only one or two big private hospitals can even do that.
Can I just add?
Yeah, Kevin, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we had this discussion with some of the medical directors of some of the biggest hospital chains in the country. So a few things that have to be addressed is at the end of the day, if you want to do it in a private hospital, the patient load, the case mix is an issue. Patient confidentiality is another, and indemnity is the third. Because at this point in time, all government officers, you don't have to pay indemnity. Imagine if you're ONG and you want to practice in a private center, do you have 100,000 to buy private practice indemnity? Because the hospital will not cover you. Unless KKM is going to cover you while you train on the other side, that's something else. But I don't foresee it happening in the near future. But what can happen is that we can have rotations to the private hospitals for certain subspecialties, because there are some subspecialists that are only found in the private services. Or we can actually, the other suggestion that we have actually given was to allow those super specialists or super subspecialized specialists to come in 1 or 2 days to share their expertise in the government side and teach the trainees and things like that, to hire them back on a consultant basis. So that was one of the things that we raised in the discussion. What I think will happen in the near future actually is going more towards what the Sunway contracts have performed. If you are aware of the Sunway contracts, right? Where it's a sharing of, wow, somebody's house. So it's a sharing of the same person, but being paid by both the private and the public sector. And at the end of it, then after 4 years of service in the public, then you will join the private sector after after specialization. So that's one of the models that's being projected. Another one that we've suggested also is looking at how the footballers go ahead. It's a transfer fee. Essentially, KKM will get a payment every time somebody leaves for the private sector. So you have to pay to a central fund, or to pay KKM a transfer fee every time a private hospital would like to hire out, or you have to buy your way out of your contract when you join the private sector. If you ask me, everybody should serve at least 5 years in the government sector before leaving for private. Because I know a lot of private doctors are probably going to hate me after this for saying this, but every time there's a complication in a private center, where does it end up? It ends up back to us in KKM, because people cannot afford long-term care in the private centers. It comes back to KKM. So we need to ensure, it goes both ways. We need to ensure that whoever that leaves is independent, is competent, and is safe before we allow the floodgates.
But I think
Because
now
I
with the
have some friends that 6 months, barely 6 months, even I myself was offered, before I finished my 6 months of gazettement, I was already offered a small private center already offered me a position. But I didn't feel that I was competent enough to go out. So that's why I'm staying on.
So
But I think now the KKM has also introduced bonds, right? For subspecialty training, you need to be bonded for 4 years or 6 years.
The payment is very high. It's 500,000, 750,000.
Yeah.
Specialty bonds are still not very high at this current moment. It's still, I think.
You mean the master's bond, right?
The latest master's bond is quite high already. It's 250 and 300,000 already, if I'm not mistaken, or the numbers may have gone up.
Yeah. It's only those who do MRCP and so on, they're probably not bonded.
Yes.
Time's a bit running out, but I just want to highlight something which the MMI wrote to the press about the JPA bonds and contract. Now, so far, I think apart from, there were a few doctors in East Malaysia, I think, who did not have their contracts renewed. And then later there was a bit of hoo-ha, then they had their contracts renewed. In the event that any of the medical officers don't have their contract renewed, since there's no guarantee, and if they are under JPA scholarship, should this be also shortened? What are your thoughts, Sean?
Yeah. I mean, if asking from the MMI point of view, yes, definitely, because I mean, these people are not even given the chance, they're not given the opportunity to, serve out their bonds. But this all ultimately falls back to JPA to ensure that these people have the avenue to, complete their service. The Star Talent Corp initiative is one very good one, but it would hinder the specialization of these people, because again, like we have mentioned before, specialization training can only be done in government hospitals. So it will be an issue for these doctors who actually want to further their careers. So, but again, I'm sensing that Kevin has got a lot to say about this. Maybe you want to pass it back to him.
Sorry, guys. I seem to be answering everything. I do apologize. But no, what Sean said is true. Now, it depends on the contract. So previously, in the old JPA contract, it stated that if the government cannot offer you a job, right, you are let go of your bond. You do not have to pay a cent. That's it. Contract finish. That's it. They will give you a surat pelepasan and jalan. The people that signed the latest JPA contract, unfortunately, there's a clause that says that if you do not get a permanent contract, you have to pay back a certain amount. Okay, now when I talked to KPPA on this, we had a little side discussion on this. What he said, what he explained was this: there were a lot of, again, like I say, we've got bad hats all over the place that rosakkan our market for us lah. So what some people do was that they ensured that they were not offered permanent contracts. Okay, they ensured that they could not be hired by the government, so that they could be let go from their bonds. That's why JPA changed the contract terms to include that if you do not get hired, you have to pay back X amount of money, right? So this has been highlighted to the JPA, to the top. We hope we hope to have further discussions on them and how to correct this. If the person had served out his 5 years or 4 years of service and was exemplary, I won't say exemplary, but you fulfilled 85 SKT, semua were okay, you had no disciplinary problems, you did not intentionally ensure that you do not get hired back by the government, you were not offered because tidak ada kekosongan, then it is fair that the thing should be, that there should be a pelepasan for your scholarship. So this one needs further discussion. I cannot say categorically that it's confirmed they will let you go, but we will definitely take it up as a case for us to discuss further. It's not something that I can solve overnight. It involves a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy that I have to go through, because we must remember whatever contract that we sign and whatever changes that they make will affect every other JPA scholar and not just medicine. Every time JPA makes a change, it's not just for medicine per se. It has to be for everybody, because you cannot single out that few people, that 10, 20, 100 fellas. It has to be for everyone. So more discussions will be made, but yes, we've noted to them. We will probably follow up on it. Okay.
So for the medical officers, where can they find the news and to meet up with people to get the latest information and support in these difficult times? So Harith, I think you mentioned there's a group for junior doctors. What do you want to share with that?
It's called Junior MOs United. It's a private group. You can you need somebody to add you into that group, to invite you into that group, and then you answer a few questions, and then you're in. It's about a 2,500.
Harith, I was told that's a militant group.
A militant group. I think basically.
We'll see how it turns out.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
what about MMI,
that's
John? What about MMI, John?
MMI is a student-led organization that is formed to provide an avenue for medical students to voice out, to come together, to network, and to learn, to educate from each other. As the group progressed, we graduated as well, and therefore we came up with a branch called MMI Doctors. Now, MMI Doctors will be talking about the issues affecting junior doctors, of course. And we would say that we are trying to play this role, and you guys can follow us and see if we can have further collaborations down the road.
Yeah, so we have social media groups. I don't
Yeah.
think we have to say they're militant or whatever, but I think it's a natural way for doctors to get together and share their
Yep.
concerns. And I think sharing news and information like that is very important. But I think we should
Mm.
also encourage all young doctors to join the MMA. The MMA is the premier medical organization for the country, and you can see Schomos is really
Yep.
fighting for the junior doctors. So kudos to Kevin for coming in and sharing all the news, and I think for all your hard work and all the previous Schomos members in the past, like including
Yeah.
Pagalavan and your predecessors and the future ones. Medicine to me is a journey. It's a journey lah. There's no, even if you like Harith, you have left, you never know what the future will be. I've had colleagues
Yep.
who when became GPs, then okay, I really desire to become a specialist. They can still join back. I remember when I was in a university hospital, I had a very senior MO. He was working as a GP in Singapore for a long time. Then decided he wants to do dermatology. Then he came back and then joined the Department of Medicine and eventually became a dermatologist. So you never know where your pathway will be. So you just have to persevere. I think don't give up. Whatever you all do, don't you agree, Pagalavan? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, life is not as easy as everyone wants it to be.
Mm,
Like, for example, even in
mm,
Australia, some of my friends were saying that even consultants, they can't get a full-time job.
mm,
They have to hunt around all over Australia to get a full-time job. Otherwise, they just get point 0.3 or point 0.5 sessions in public sector and so on. So
Mm.
it's not just an issue in Malaysia; it's happening everywhere in the world. You know, and I was talking just recently to a guy. I mean, he's a British citizen, and his daughter just graduated medicine in Spain, and he was saying that 40% of graduates in Spain do not even get internship job.
wow.
It's so interesting because he told me that in Spain, after they graduate, they have to sit for another exam, which is known as a
Mm,
licensing exam, which then ranks them from 1, 2, 3. They rank
And
the
that's
student.
going to happen here in Malaysia as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
that's
based on that
Hopefully, hopefully.
ranking, they apply for internship, and only about
mm,
60% is going to get the internship. So the 40% will probably just have to work some other job, like pharmaceutical company and so on. So this is
mm,
not something unique that's only happening in Malaysia. The only issue in Malaysia is the number of medical schools that we have, and the entries and so on. But in terms of job market, I think this is a worldwide phenomenon now that's happening everywhere. So life, as I said, is not going to be, there are so many challenges we have to face. Some of it we just have to persevere and see what comes along. But yeah, we just have to find our way and survival of the fittest, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, I think we're coming up to the hour mark. We've covered a lot of ground, and I think I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming in and sharing your thoughts, your experiences, and I think do join us in the DOBBS forum if you want to continue, and then join the junior doctors groups, MMI, and so on. But I think just get another word of encouragement to all the medical officers: don't give up. Whatever you do, even whether you stay
Yep.
on or even whether you leave. I mean, life is a journey, so you just have to
Mm.
follow your dreams. Your dreams will never die,
Yep.
but they may change. You might find
Yeah.
you actually, you want something else, and so on, and learn new
Mm.
skills all the time, and make yourself indispensable in whatever you do. And then I think you persevere this way, the future will be bright for you. It's competitive life. I think it's getting very hard now, in almost every aspect of many careers. So we just have to work hard. Yeah, don't you agree, guys? Mm?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
Yep,
yeah.
Of course.
Mm. I don't think I see any more comments, but the videos will be left hosted on the Facebook. I will upload a
Mm.
copy to YouTube as well, so people may feel free to read through. But do spread the word amongst the contract officers. it's not all doom and gloom. There's some light at the end of the tunnel. We hope to hear some good news, as Kevin has shared with us with the current negotiations with JPA lah. So we hope that there will be some parity, a bit more fairness, as well as some important changes in the career opportunities in terms of specialization. Okay. So any other last words from anyone? Otherwise, it's been a good sharing session. I thank you all.
Yeah. I think it takes quite a bit of a political will to get this over, because it is something that requires the attention of our policymakers. Really do hope that they work with us to come to a resolution of this issue. Yeah, it's very important. The health is the most important aspect of the country, if you ask me. Yeah.
Harith, anything you want to say?
Yeah, just to pick up on a bit of the more action to be taken by the government. What I can say is the current sentiment among the medical officers is not good. It's not good. So to expect them to really invest,
morale is low.
The projection is not good. I think it's unfair for them. What the government has to do is to win back their confidence that thing is going in the right way. At this point, what we can say is we're having negotiation, but we don't have anything that we can say indicator has been met. It is good. So that thing has to be met first, and then we can expect the junior MOs to have some confidence in the system.
Yeah, we hear you, and I hope the JPA hears you too. And nothing better than publicity. Dr. Pagalavan, anything? All I can say to you is, please carry on blogging. You're reading, reading your blogs is very entertaining.
I was just about to write another article. It's okay. I'll think about that. I've slowed down a little bit because of course, because I need to get some information before I write some blogs. Because I have contacts in ministry, in MMC, and everything. So sometimes a lot of people feed me a lot of information. Yeah, I mean, what Harith mentioned. I mean, talking to these government guys. I mean, I've sat with them for years before in the early 2000s. I'll just put it this way. It's like talking to a wall. Okay. I've been there. I've done it. And I'll tell you that. Okay. It's not easy. Sometimes in the meetings, they will just tell you, okay, we'll look into this. We'll look into that. That's it. Yeah. File to top, filing. That's it. Okay. It's bureaucracy of our government. Okay. So it's a difficult thing to break through, but again, like what I said, we need to keep trying. We cannot just let go. Just keep trying, like what Kevin is doing. Keep having meetings, keep bringing up this matter, and that's what we used to do in the when I was in Schomos in the early 2000s. So eventually, you may request for 10, 1 or 2 might go through. See, you don't expect all 10 to go through. That's how it is. That's how I'll say.
Well, as long as small steps, if like they can understand that the specialization doesn't mean you need cuti belajar. Specialization means you need the opportunity to join the training program. You're still you're not belajar in the library or something. It's part of training, working. So I wish that we had a separate medical commission. I think there was talk about that, but I don't think there may be no political will
to have to go to parliament and so on.
It's very, very difficult. But in the meantime, I think if Schomos, the bodies can continue working with the JPA, we hope there's a better future for contract medical officers. Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. I know morale is poor, so hence the reason for this also. But I think we hope maybe by the end of the year, we'll hear some good news. Yeah. Okay. So with that, I bid you all good night. Thank you very much for the participation. Thank you everyone for watching. Feel free to rewatch if you didn't join us.
Thank you for organizing.
Yes. No. My pleasure. Okay. So I wish you all good night, and we'll end the live stream now. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.